The mockery begins. The stars in the sky were nothing but distant whispers, a silent canvas stretched across the vastness of space. On the distant planet of Veylith, in the heart of the alien empire, a group of royal figures gathered around an ornate table. Their faces were cold and calculating, their eyes narrowed in judgment. Among them were the princesses of Veylith, powerful, untouchable, and cold-hearted. They held dominion over vast sections of the galaxy, and nothing, no one, was beneath their contempt. At the head of the table sat Princess Heir, the eldest and most powerful of the royal sisters. Her sharp gaze scanned the holographic map of the galaxy displayed before them. Her lips curled into a smile of disdain as her eyes focused on the blue and green planet at the farthest corner of the galaxy. Earth, Earth, Heir said, her voice laced with mockery. A planet full of primitive, violent creatures who still fight with their hands rather than their minds. It's hard to believe they call themselves the human race, a race of chaos. The other princesses nodded in agreement, their laughter echoing throughout the high chambers. Princess Heir, the second eldest, scoffed as she swiped her fingers through the hologram, zooming in on the small blue planet. They still haven't mastered interstellar travel without depending on alien technology, she said, her voice dripping with superiority. How are they even still alive? A disgrace to the galaxy. At the far end of the table sat Princess Heir, the youngest of the three, her eyes fixed on Earth with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. I don't understand, she remarked, her voice soft yet firm. If they are so weak, why have we never been able to conquer them? Heir's cold smile widened. They are insignificant, Heir. Weak, yes, but there is one thing they have that no one else in the galaxy can quite explain. They are resilient. Earthlings may be brutal, but they always find a way to survive, to fight back. But don't fool yourself. They are no threat to us. They will never rise to power. Heir raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. And what makes you so sure of that, sister? Heir's gaze hardened. Because their history is riddled with failure. Every attempt at greatness has led them to self-destruction. If they were ever to rise, they would only bring chaos, not order. The room fell silent for a moment, as the sisters pondered her words. But the silence was short-lived. The laughter resumed as Heir leaned back in her chair. Let's not waste our time worrying about them. We have more important matters at hand, like ensuring our kingdom's dominance. Earth is a playground for us to toy with, not a threat. Heir's eyes gleamed as she looked down at Earth one last time. They will remain beneath us, forever. Let them mock their own weaknesses. It makes no difference. They are far too insignificant for us to concern ourselves with. As the princesses continued their discussions about matters of the empire, they paid little mind to the tiny, seemingly insignificant world they had just dismissed. The Earth, for them, was nothing but a source of amusement, a fragile little speck in the universe that was no more relevant than a flickering star in the distance. But what none of the princesses knew, and what no one could have predicted, was that their laughter and disdain were about to echo back at them in a way none of them would ever forget. Earth, that weak and insignificant planet, was about to send forth an Heir, a ruler who would challenge everything they thought they knew about power, strength, and destiny. And that human Heir, who had always lived among the stars, would soon become the galaxy's most unexpected king. The mysterious inheritance. The sun had just begun to set on Earth, casting an amber glow across the landscape. As the world slowed down for the evening, something far more significant was unfolding in the quiet corners of the galaxy. On Earth, in a dusty, forgotten corner of the world, an event was about to occur that would change everything. At a small, inconspicuous estate nestled in the outskirts of a bustling city, a young man named Ethan sat quietly at his desk. His life, though normal by all standards, had always felt ordinary, predictable. He was a mechanic, fixing up machines, sometimes tinkering with old, broken-down equipment. But that evening, as he sifted through old letters and documents, one envelope caught his attention. It was addressed to him, in elegant handwriting, with no return address, something unusual for the quiet, uneventful life he led. Curious, he tore open the envelope, revealing a thick parchment inside. As he read the contents, his hands began to tremble. The letter was from an alien empire, an empire that existed far beyond the stars, an empire Ethan had never heard of, and certainly never expected to be a part of. The letter stated that Ethan's great-great-grandfather, a man he had never known, had once been a diplomat in the galactic courts. This man, it turned out, had been more than just a mere diplomat. He had been a secret heir to one of the most powerful and ancient families in the galaxy. As part of an ancient galactic pact, a bloodline had been established that would one day grant the human heir the right to rule the alien empire. The letter went on to say that Ethan, as the closest living relative, was now the heir to this incredible legacy. He was the one to inherit a position of unimaginable power, one that could change the fate of not only Earth, but the entire galaxy. Ethan stared at the letter in disbelief, his heart racing. "This can't be real," he whispered to himself, the words almost too outlandish to grasp. He glanced around his modest apartment, as if looking for signs of any hidden cameras or pranks, but everything was eerily normal. The letter continued to detail the inheritance, a throne on a distant alien planet, a kingdom far more vast and powerful than anything Earth could ever imagine. The royal family of Veylith, long thought to be the supreme rulers of the galaxy, had been living in a fragile balance of power, and now their destiny was about to shift. The human heir, who had lived among them as an unnoticed speck on the map, would now be the one to inherit their throne. But this inheritance was not just a matter of titles or riches. The letter spoke of great power, of the ability to command armies, control vast resources, and dictate the fate of entire civilizations. Ethan was being offered the keys to the universe itself. But with this power came a challenge. If he accepted this inheritance, he would be thrust into a deadly game of politics, intrigue, and war. As Ethan sat in stunned silence, his mind raced with the implications of what had just been thrust upon him. He had always been a quiet observer of the world, someone who kept to himself. Now he was expected to rule an empire of unimaginable proportions, an empire full of powerful, proud alien species, each with their own agenda, and each potentially looking at him as an outsider. And then there was the most pressing question. Why had this inheritance been hidden for so long? Why had no one told him of his true lineage? Was this a trap? Was this an elaborate scheme to manipulate him into a power struggle that could cost him everything? His head spun as he stared at the letter once more, the weight of the decision crushing down on him. He had always been just an ordinary man. What did he know of ruling an empire? How could someone like him ever stand against the formidable alien princesses who already ruled with an iron fist? Just as Ethan was about to shove the letter aside in frustration, something unexpected happened. A hologram flickered to life before him, a projection from the letter itself. It was the image of a royal advisor from the alien empire, a being unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Tall, with glowing eyes and a regal presence, the alien spoke in a language Ethan could not understand. Yet somehow, the words came through in perfect English. "Chosen Heir," the hologram began, its voice resonating with authority. "The throne of Veylith awaits. Your ancestors have paved the way, but it is you who must decide your fate. The kingdom is in turmoil, and your bloodline, long forgotten, is now needed to restore balance. The galaxy will tremble, but you must rise. Will you accept the legacy or reject the power that is rightfully yours?" The message ended abruptly, leaving Ethan with more questions than answers. His life had just taken a turn into the unknown. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was now the inheritor of a throne, a king in waiting for an empire of unimaginable scope. Ethan's world shifted on its axis. What had once been a simple, unremarkable existence was now a path leading him towards something far greater and far more dangerous. As the weight of the inheritance settled in his chest, one thing became painfully clear. his life would never be the same again. He could either accept his new destiny and enter a world of unimaginable power, or refuse and live with the knowledge that he had abandoned his birthright. The decision would change everything, and Ethan had no idea just how much. But as the stars began to twinkle outside his window, one thought clung to his mind. He had no idea what he was about to step into. The alien princess's reactions. The halls of the Veylith royal palace were always filled with whispers and the hum of galactic affairs. But today, the air was thick with anger and confusion. In the grand chamber, Princess Heir, the eldest and most powerful of the royal sisters, paced back and forth, her sharp eyes gleaming with a mixture of disbelief and fury. Her mind raced, consumed by the news that had arrived from the distant planet of Earth. How could this be? Heir muttered, her voice low and seething. A human is the heir to the Veylith throne. This is madness. Our family has ruled for centuries. We are the most powerful force in the galaxy, and now we are told that a primitive species from the edge of the galaxy is the rightful heir. Her fists clenched in frustration as she turned toward her sisters. Princess Heir, sitting calmly at the table, lifted an eyebrow but said nothing. Her younger sister, Princess Leora, sat on the opposite side, her fingers tracing the edge of a delicate crystal ornament. The air between the three was thick with tension, and it was clear that they were all struggling to make sense of this startling revelation. Heir's voice grew louder, her irritation now fully apparent. This is a direct threat to everything we've built. Do you understand that? We are the ones who control the galaxy. The humans have barely even figured out space travel. What makes them think they can just waltz in and claim what is rightfully ours? Heir, ever the strategist, spoke up. You're right to be upset, Heir, but let's not allow our emotions to cloud our judgment. We need to investigate this further. The bloodline has been kept secret for centuries, and yet here we are. The letter that was sent to this human. It speaks of an inheritance that we cannot ignore. This human heir may be a threat we are not prepared for. Leora, who had remained silent until now, looked up from her crystal ornament, her face a mixture of intrigue and caution. Perhaps this is an opportunity, she said softly, her voice almost calm compared to her sister's heated reactions. If this human truly is the heir, we cannot just dismiss him. We need to know who he is and whether he poses any real challenge to us. We should meet him, but on our terms. Let him come to us. Heir scoffed, shaking her head. Meet him? Why would we lower ourselves to meet with some insignificant creature from Earth? He should come to us begging for our mercy. We are royalty, the rulers of the galaxy. There is no need to entertain this farce. But Heir, ever the realist, countered. What if he doesn't come begging, Heir? What if he's different? This human could possess qualities we have yet to understand. The legacy he carries, though strange and foreign, might make him far more capable than we believe. Heir's glare could have cut through steel. We shall see. He's nothing but an anomaly, a glitch in the galactic order that we will correct swiftly. The sisters fell into a tense silence. The weight of the news was hard to ignore. Heir's pride, Heir's calculated nature, and Leora's quiet curiosity all battled in their minds as they weighed their next steps. How could this human, someone so far removed from their royal lineage, ever hope to challenge them? And yet, the message was clear. This human was their rival, whether they liked it or not. While the princesses were consumed with their own doubts, a message from the royal council arrived. A holographic projection appeared in the center of the room, the image of a stern-faced advisor. Your Majesties, he began, bowing respectfully before speaking. The human heir has accepted his inheritance. He will be arriving at Veylith in one standard galactic week. A cold silence followed the announcement. For a brief moment, no one spoke. Heir was the first to break the quiet, her voice dangerously calm. Prepare the palace. When this human arrives, we will show him who rules the galaxy. Heir nodded thoughtfully. though a flicker of concern danced behind her eyes. "We must be careful. Underestimating him could be our greatest mistake. We need to learn more about this Heir, his background, his capabilities, what made him the chosen one. We can't afford to overlook anything." Leora, who had remained silent throughout most of the conversation, spoke again. "Perhaps instead of seeing him as a threat, we should see him as a key to strengthening our empire. If we win him over, we could use his unique position to our advantage." The words were out before Sarah could stop them. Her lips curled into a smile, though it was laced with a dangerous edge. "You may be right, Leora. If this human is to rule, he will do so under our guidance, and we will shape him into a ruler who serves our empire." Zira's gaze softened slightly, and she nodded. "Let's meet with him, then, but we control the terms. We must test him, see if he has the strength to lead, or if he will crumble under the weight of expectations." The projection of the royal advisor flickered off, leaving the three princesses in a heavy silence. Their plans were set into motion, but the future was uncertain. The human Heir, though still unknown to them, had already begun to unravel the fabric of their world. Little did they know, the arrival of this Heir would not only challenge their rule, but would ignite a fire that would forever alter the balance of power in the galaxy. Arrival of the human king. The royal palace of Veylith gleamed under the twin suns of the distant planet, its towering spires reflecting the light of the galaxy. The air was thick with anticipation as alien courtiers, generals, and dignitaries gathered in the palace's vast courtyard, their eyes fixed on the skies. The long-awaited moment was upon them. The human Heir was coming. Princess Zira stood on the balcony of the palace, her gaze fixed on the darkening horizon. Her expression was a mixture of curiosity and cold calculation, the distant flicker of a starry sky reflecting in her icy eyes. The arrival of the human had been an event that could not be ignored, despite her disdain for the situation. She refused to let her pride falter in front of her subjects. "He's coming," Zira said, her voice measured and calm, as always. "We should be prepared. The arrival of an outsider with such an inheritance, it's unprecedented." "I don't care about his inheritance," Zira snapped. "I care about whether he will bend to our will, or if he will be another inconvenience to deal with." Leora, who had been strangely quiet, looked up from her thoughts, her eyes alight with intrigue. "It's not just about power, Zira. It's about understanding this human. What is it about him that the stars have chosen him as their Heir? He might be the key to something far greater than we've anticipated." Zira gave her youngest sister a sharp glance, but said nothing. Her thoughts were consumed by the challenge ahead. She had every intention of breaking this human, of showing him that even if he had the right to claim the throne, the galaxy did not bend easily. Veylith's throne had been theirs for centuries, and it would remain theirs. The tension in the air thickened as the human ship finally entered the planet's atmosphere. The sound of it cutting through the air was unlike anything the princesses had heard. His ship was small, unassuming, a stark contrast to the grandeur of the Veylith royal fleet. But what struck them most was the sheer confidence with which it descended, as if the ship were meant to land on their soil as a rightful heir. As the ship touched down in the courtyard, the air seemed to still for a moment. The alien princesses stood at their positions, a regal presence surrounding them. Their soldiers, dignitaries, and courtiers watched in hushed awe, waiting for the arrival of the one who could change the fate of the galaxy. The ship's door slid open with a low hiss, and out stepped a figure, a man, human, undeniably, though garbed in a strange, almost regal outfit. He was tall, with strong shoulders and a confident gait, though he appeared as though he had never set foot in such a royal environment before. His face, though unmarked by the alien grandeur of his new position, exuded a quiet strength. There was no arrogance, no hesitation in his step, only the steady stride of someone who had come to claim what was his, whether he was ready for it or not. Ethan, the human Heir, scanned the royal courtyard, his eyes lingering on the alien princesses, who stood in a tight formation, their regal expressions unreadable. It was clear that they did not expect someone like him. His appearance, simple by royal standards, yet dignified, was a stark contrast to their extravagant, polished figures. For a moment, there was silence. The princesses did not move. Neither did Ethan. The air was thick with tension. Zira's eyes narrowed as she took in his appearance. "So the human arrives," she said softly, her voice low and sharp, as though she were speaking to herself. "Let's see what you've got, Earthling. You may wear the crown, but you will never rule like us." Ethan stepped forward, his eyes locked on Zira's. He knew he was in uncharted territory, far beyond anything he had ever known. The letters, the holograms, the strange inheritance, it all felt surreal. Yet, standing here, facing the royal family of Veylith, he understood one thing. This was his new reality. There was no turning back. "I am Ethan," he said, his voice firm and steady, "the human heir to the throne of Veylith." The princesses did not respond immediately. Instead, they studied him. Zira with a calculating stare, Zira with a more thoughtful, guarded expression, and Leora with a quiet curiosity. "Well, Ethan, the human heir," Zira spoke, her voice dripping with mockery. "You may have the bloodline, but you do not have the power. You may have walked in here as royalty, but here you are nothing but a guest who has overstayed his welcome." The crowd shifted uncomfortably at her words, but Ethan remained calm, his eyes locked onto hers. "I didn't come here to be your guest. I came to rule, and that's exactly what I intend to do." A murmur ran through the crowd, and for a moment, it seemed as though time itself had paused. The princesses, expecting this human to cower before them, found themselves struck by his confidence. Was this how he had always been, or had something changed in him since he learned of his inheritance? Zira, ever the strategist, took a step forward, her voice measured. "If you are truly our heir, then prove it. Power is not given. It is earned. We will test you, human. We will see if you are truly worthy of our legacy." Ethan stood tall, his eyes unwavering. "Test me all you want. I'm here to claim my birthright. And no one, no matter how powerful, will take that from me." The princesses exchanged glances, their eyes flashing with a mixture of disbelief and respect. This was not what they had expected. This human, this mere man from a forgotten planet, was not intimidated. As the first challenge was about to begin, the tension in the air was palpable. Ethan knew this would be no simple test, but he had no intention of backing down. This was his moment, and he would prove himself, no matter what. Little did he know, his presence had already begun to unravel the carefully constructed web of power that had held the Veylith Empire in place for centuries. The princesses were about to face a challenge unlike anything they had ever known, and the galaxy was on the verge of change. A challenge like no other. The air inside the Grand Palace Hall was thick with the tension of unspoken words as the alien princesses looked upon Ethan, the human heir who had come to claim what was his. The gauntlet had been thrown, and now it was time to see whether the man from Earth could truly back up his claims to the throne. The time for diplomacy was over. The time for trials had arrived. Princess Zira, her posture as regal and unyielding as ever, stepped forward, her eyes locked on Ethan, with a mixture of disdain and curiosity. "You claim to be our king," she said, her voice ice-cold. "But power is not granted by blood alone. To rule Veylith, you must prove yourself worthy. You will undergo 3 trials. Each one will test a different aspect of your strength, your wisdom, and your will. Fail even one, and you will be cast aside like the weakling you are." Ethan stood tall, meeting her gaze unwaveringly. Though he felt the weight of the moment bearing down on him, he was not afraid. He had already come this far, and there was no turning back. "I accept your trials, Princess. I will prove to you that I am more than just an heir. I am the king you never expected." The princesses exchanged looks, and without another word, Zira waved her hand. The air around them shimmered as a massive holographic display flickered to life. It was a series of elaborate, glowing symbols, some alien in design, others resembling ancient scripts from Earth. The first trial was about to begin. Trial 1. The Test of Strength. A section of the floor parted, revealing a massive arena, one that could have housed an entire army. A booming voice echoed through the chamber as the arena materialized, its structure designed to challenge anyone who dared to step inside. The first trial will test your strength, Shira declared, her voice echoing in the vast hall. You will face one of the fiercest warriors from our royal guard. Defeat him, and you will prove that you are capable of leading by force. A heavy gate at the far end of the arena slid open, and from the shadows emerged a towering figure, a Veylith warrior clad in shining armor, wielding an enormous blade that seemed to pulse with energy. The warrior's eyes glowed with an intense, predatory light as he took slow, deliberate steps toward Ethan, who remained calm, his heart pounding only slightly faster than usual. Shira's smirk grew wider as she watched Ethan's reaction. Your first challenge, she said, is to defeat him in single combat. Fail, and you are not fit to rule. The warrior raised his blade high, ready to strike. Ethan knew this would not be an easy fight, but he also knew that he had no choice but to win. The human strength was nothing compared to the alien warriors, but there was one thing Ethan had that the Veylith warrior didn't: resourcefulness. As the first strike came crashing down, Ethan dodged, narrowly avoiding the sharp edge of the blade. He rolled to the side, his mind racing. This wasn't about raw strength. It was about survival. The warrior came at him again, faster this time, but Ethan ducked under the swing, finding a weak point in the warrior's form. For a moment, the fight seemed like it might end in disaster, but Ethan's instincts kicked in. He darted forward and seized a broken piece of metal from the floor, using it as a makeshift weapon. With precise timing, he used the metal to disarm the warrior, knocking the heavy blade from his hand. The crowd gasped. No one expected a human to stand his ground, let alone best a warrior of such power. The alien warrior growled in frustration, but didn't attack again. Instead, he stepped back, acknowledging Ethan's quick thinking. The trial had been passed, but only just. Shira's face was a mask of controlled fury, her lips pressed tightly together. Impressive, for a human. But that was only the first trial. The next one will be much harder. Trial 2. The Test of Wisdom. With the first trial behind him, Ethan had no time to celebrate. The arena around him dissolved, and the floor began to shift once again. The next challenge was about to begin. The lights dimmed, and a series of floating symbols appeared in the air, complex equations, cryptic messages, and impossible riddles that filled the space. Now, Shira's voice rang out. You will face the test of wisdom. To rule, you must not only be strong but intelligent enough to outthink your enemies. Solve these puzzles, and we may begin to see your true potential. Fail, and you will have no place in our empire. Ethan's eyes scanned the riddles, his mind racing. He could feel the pressure building. He had never been trained in the ways of galactic politics, let alone the advanced sciences of the Veylith. But he was a quick learner, and Earth had taught him how to think outside the box. The first riddle flickered in front of him. What flies without wings and has the power to change everything in its path? Ethan didn't hesitate. His mind immediately went to the one thing that had always moved the world, regardless of technology or strength: time. Time. Ethan said aloud, watching as the riddle dissolved. He had solved it. The next appeared. I have no voice, but I can still speak. I have no body, but I am often seen. What am I? Ethan paused, thinking hard. It was a tricky one. After a moment, it clicked. A thought. The riddles continued, each more complex than the last. The princesses watched with growing surprise as Ethan not only answered each one but did so quickly, his logic flawless. By the time the final riddle appeared, Ethan felt a wave of confidence wash over him. The more you take, the more you leave behind. What am I? Ethan smiled to himself. Footsteps, he said, his voice steady. The riddles disappeared, and the symbols faded away, leaving behind a quiet hum in the air. He had passed the second trial. Trial 3. The Test of Will. Xira's voice broke the silence, now colder than ever. The final trial is not about strength or intellect. This trial is about your will to rule, your ability to make the hardest decisions when the galaxy demands them. You will be tested not in battle, but in morality. A hologram flickered to life, showing a scene of devastation, an alien world on the brink of collapse. You must decide the fate of this world. The people here are begging for help. They are suffering from famine, war, and disease. You have the power to save them. However, you also know that helping them will drain your empire's resources, leaving your own people vulnerable to attack. You must choose. Do you sacrifice your people to save these aliens, or do you abandon them to preserve your own? The weight of the decision crushed down on Ethan, and for the first time since he arrived on Veylith, doubt crept into his mind. The choice seemed impossible. He thought of Earth, of the sacrifices his people had made throughout history to survive. But Ethan's answer came quickly, his voice steady and unflinching. I would help them. I would find another way to ensure the safety of my people, but I would never let suffering go unanswered. A king must rule with compassion, not just strength. Xira's face hardened, but even she could not deny the wisdom in his answer. Very well. You have passed all 3 trials. But remember this. The throne of Veylith is not simply a prize to be claimed. It is a burden. A burden you will carry for the rest of your life. Ethan stood tall, the weight of his newfound title settling on his shoulders. He had passed the trials, but the hardest challenge of all was just beginning. The galaxy was watching, and now that he had proven his worth, there was no turning back. The unexpected alliance. The Grand Hall of Veylith was eerily quiet as Ethan stood before the 3 alien princesses. His heart still raced from the trials he had just completed, but he held his ground, his body poised with a quiet strength. The princesses had never expected a human to pass their tests, let alone prove himself as capable as Ethan had. Yet here he was, standing before them. Undeniably the Heir, undeniably the ruler. Xira, the eldest and most powerful princess, stood rigidly, her arms crossed over her chest, her gaze cold and calculating. You've passed the trials, she said with an air of reluctant respect. But don't mistake that for a victory. You are still nothing more than a pawn in a game far larger than you can comprehend. Ethan met her gaze with unwavering confidence. I'm no pawn, Xira. I may not have your centuries of experience, but I have something you don't. Determination and the will to make this galaxy a better place. Xira's lips curled into a thin smile. Better. The galaxy is not a place for kindness, Earthling. It is a place for strength, for power. And power is what we've held for centuries. Perhaps it's time for a new kind of power, Ethan replied calmly. One that isn't about domination, but about leadership. One that understands the value of compassion, not just conquest. A flicker of surprise passed through Xira's eyes, but she quickly masked it. Such ideals will make you weak. You'll see soon enough how naive you are. Ethan wasn't fazed. He had expected this response. The princesses of Veylith were set in their ways, locked in a belief that only strength mattered. But he wasn't here to win their approval. He was here to lead, not just them, but the entire galaxy. However, as he turned to leave the hall, a voice halted him. You're not wrong, Ethan. It was Leora, the youngest princess, the one who had remained quiet for most of their interactions. Her words were soft, but they carried a weight that made Ethan pause. He turned to face her, sensing something different in her tone, something he hadn't expected from her. You have passed our tests, Leora continued, her eyes reflecting a mixture of curiosity and respect. But you're not the only one who has a choice to make. Ethan's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Leora took a slow step forward, her expression serious. "I've watched you, Earthling. You've shown strength, intelligence, and compassion, things that my sisters and I have forgotten in the years of our reign. And though they won't admit it, they know you're capable of ruling. But they won't support you, not unless you change the way things are done here." Ethan's confusion deepened. "What do you want from me?" Lyra's eyes locked onto his with a quiet intensity. "An alliance. If you're going to rule, you'll need more than just your own strength. You'll need mine. You'll need my knowledge of Veylith and its people. You'll need my support to challenge my sisters, to change the system they've created." The offer hung in the air between them, a dangerous proposition. Ethan understood the weight of Leora's words. To side with her was to go against the very structure of the Veylith Empire, to pit himself against the most powerful royal family in the galaxy. But if she truly believed in his leadership, then perhaps this was the only way forward. "Why?" Ethan asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. "Why would you help me when it means turning your back on your own family?" Lyra's expression softened slightly, but the seriousness in her eyes remained. "Because my family's rule is crumbling. They refuse to see it, but I do. The galaxy is changing, and if they keep their grip on power, they will only bring about our destruction. I have seen enough bloodshed, enough cruelty, to know that it's time for something different. And maybe, just maybe, you are the one who can bring that change." Ethan took a deep breath, weighing the consequences of her words. If he accepted Leora's offer, he would have a powerful ally, someone who knew the inner workings of the Empire better than anyone. But there was also the risk of turning the other princesses against him, of creating enemies where there had once been potential allies. Finally, he nodded. "I accept your alliance, but we do this on our terms. I will not be anyone's puppet, and I will not rule through fear. If we're going to make this work, we need to build something new, something better." Leora smiled faintly, the first sign of genuine warmth from her since they had met. "Agreed. I'll help you reshape Veylith, Ethan. But be warned, my sisters will not make this easy. You will have to be prepared for what's coming. The real battle is about to begin." With that, Leora turned and walked away, her figure fading into the shadows of the palace halls. Ethan stood there for a moment, his mind racing. He had just made an alliance with the youngest princess of Veylith, someone who could help him change the galaxy. But he also knew that this decision had set him on a path that could destroy everything he had worked for. As he made his way out of the palace, the weight of his newfound power pressed down on him. He had proven himself worthy of the throne, but now, the true test was about to begin. The princesses of Veylith would never accept him without a fight, and Leora's offer, though tempting, came with its own dangers. The galaxy was on the brink of a new era, and Ethan was at the center of it all. He had no choice but to fight for the future he believed in, and for the future of the galaxy itself. The battle for the throne of Veylith was far from over. The coronation of the human king. The Grand Hall of Veylith had never seen a gathering like this. The marble floors shimmered with a polished sheen, and the towering pillars reached up into the vast ceiling, covered in intricate alien artwork. The air was thick with anticipation and uncertainty. The royal family stood at the head of the room, their presence commanding every corner. But today, everything was different. The alien princesses, once the undisputed rulers of the galaxy, now stood with unease in their hearts. The youngest princess, Leora, stood beside Ethan, the human Heir, as he was about to be crowned king. The weight of the moment was heavy. He was no longer just an outsider from Earth. He was now their king. His rise had been swift, unexpected, and powerful, and today the galaxy would bear witness to the human who would challenge everything. Zira, the eldest princess, stood with her arms crossed, her face a mask of stoic resignation. Zira, the middle sister, had a cold, calculating expression, though there was a flicker of uncertainty behind her eyes. The three sisters were silent as Ethan approached the throne, his eyes fixed ahead, his every step steady and resolute. It was impossible to deny it now. He was the heir, the ruler, and nothing could change that fact. A hush fell over the crowd as Ethan made his way to the throne, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the vast room. His eyes scanned the assembly, taking in the faces of the elite, the dignitaries, and the powerful figures who had once dismissed him as insignificant. They now looked to him as their king. Ethan paused before the throne, his heart pounding in his chest. He had dreamed of this moment, but now that it was here, the weight of it all was almost overwhelming. He wasn't just standing in the heart of an alien empire. He was about to lead it. The future of countless worlds rested on his shoulders. Lyra stepped forward, her voice quiet but firm. "Ethan, heir to Veylith, you have proven yourself through strength, wisdom, and compassion. Today, you will take the throne and begin the work of rebuilding this empire. The galaxy is yours to shape." Sarah, her voice cold, spoke next. "We did not choose you to rule, human. But you are here. And for now, you will sit on that throne. But know this, we will never accept you as one of us. You are an outsider, and you always will be." Ethan met Sarah's gaze, unflinching. He had heard the bitterness in her words, but it no longer affected him. He was beyond their scorn, beyond their rejection. This moment was his. "I am not here to make enemies of you," he said, his voice steady. "I am here to make a difference, not just for the Veylith people, but for the entire galaxy. We can rule together, as equals, if we choose to move forward, not backward." Zira, who had remained quiet until now, finally spoke, her voice low. "We will see, human. We will see if your ideals can withstand the pressure of ruling this empire. It is not an easy thing to hold the reins of such power. And remember, you may have won the trials, but a ruler's true strength is tested when they face their greatest challenges." Ethan nodded, acknowledging their words, but his resolve was firm. He had already faced countless challenges, and he would face many more. But now he had the strength of his convictions and the support of Lyra, an ally who saw the future as he did. The galaxy would change, and he would be the one to lead it into a new era. The royal advisor, a figure of immense power in the court, stepped forward with the ceremonial crown, a symbol of Veylith's authority and heritage. The crown was beautiful, intricate, with jewels that shimmered in the light. It was not just an ornament. It was a symbol of the immense responsibility Ethan was about to take on. As the advisor placed the crown on Ethan's head, the room erupted in murmurs. The human had done the impossible. He had claimed the throne. The weight of the crown felt like a physical burden, but Ethan stood tall, his posture regal, his heart steady. Lyra's eyes shone with pride as she stood beside him. She had helped him get to this point, and now she would stand by his side as he began his reign. The Veylith Empire was on the cusp of change, and though many would resist, the winds of transformation had already begun. Sarah, Zira, and the other courtiers might have harbored resentment, but they knew deep down that Ethan's rule could not be denied. He had earned his place on the throne, and the galaxy would soon see the strength of his leadership. Ethan raised his hand, signaling for silence. The room obeyed, and for a moment, it felt as though the entire universe had paused, awaiting his next words. "I stand before you, not as a human or an alien," he began, his voice clear and strong, "but as a ruler, a king who will forge a new path for the galaxy. We will rebuild this empire, not on fear and domination, but on justice, compassion, and unity. The future is ours to create, and I will not let it be defined by the mistakes of the past." The crowd remained silent, absorbing the weight of his words. For the first time in centuries, the Veylith Empire was confronted with a choice: to continue down the path of tyranny and oppression, or to take a step toward a future of cooperation and peace. As Ethan stood at the helm of a new era, the princesses of Veylith, Sarah, Zira, and Lyra, watched with a mixture of skepticism, uncertainty, and hope. The future was no longer certain. But one thing was undeniable. The galaxy was changing, and Ethan, the human king, was the one who would lead it into the unknown. The coronation was complete. The reign of the human king had begun.